what can be done to drive domestic demand? So what can be done to drive domestic demand?
Yes, I feel what should be done is they should set up some stabilization funds, intervention fund to some targeted sectors of the economy. Yeah, with a lot of talk have been done around the agricultural sector, but there's other way we feel the economy, how you can drive demand. Once they are able to produce, like the manufacturing sector, you identify like the textile industry. When you also look at the value chain, most of the goods that are being produced, even in the agricultural sector, are not being processed. So if they are able to develop the processing of some of these agricultural products, then that would try and increase the revenue government, the revenue that will be earned from that, and also serve as an import substitution, which they to reduce the demand for the dollar. But you also want to look at trying to see how can government diversify its revenue. 70% from oil. Can we continue to, is this sustainable? No, it will always be exposed to external shock. Tax revenue, when you look at Ghana, about 73% of its total revenue is derived from tax. When you also look at Kenya, about 88% of its total revenue is derived from tax. So why don't we see how we can increase the tax base? A lot of the activity, the informal sector, is not captured in the tax revenue. If they are able to build a robust tax base, then it will also help increase the revenue that will be generated, which can also be invested in some of these key sectors to drive this key
sector. But the Federal Inland Revenue Service has consistently done that.
Good, have been doing well in the past. And
have been doing, yes, have been doing
well. But a lot, when you still look at the percentage, it's still around, like 13% of the total revenue. If some of these countries, African countries, can be successful in that. When you look at Lagos State, what has helped Lagos State drive is IGR, which accounts for 70% of the total IGR generated by the total federation. It's because of how it's been, its tax revenue base has increased. The system, most of the system it has used in driving its tax revenue base. When you look at it in terms of the company income tax, which is like 30% that goes to the federal government, you need to, a lot of the informal sectors are not captured, does not pay this tax. A lot needs to be done. A lot needs to be done. In terms of VAT, our VAT is still very low, and we have projected that likely before the end of the year, after election, they may increase VAT from 5% to 10%, though it's going to increase the cost of services or cost of activities. But when you look at it in terms of how the revenue, like the federal government have projected that if tax is increased by 5%, it will generate around 614 billion, which when you look at it in terms of, that is based on the current amount of goods and tax derived from the goods and services produced. So if they are able to capture more, it's really going to help diversify the revenue of the economy.
I think at this point, the federal government should not, and I'm not sure they are, looking at, any tax policy change in terms of
because we don't expect to see anything right now.
That's not the issue now. I had the privilege of being in a meeting with the Honorable Minister of Finance and the Coordinating Minister of the Economy, during the chat with the private sector some 2 or 3 weeks ago. And she was very clear on that. The policies might be looked at on a medium to long-term basis, but in the immediate term, the important thing to the government is to administer our tax even more efficiently. I give it to FIRS. They have been doing it well, and I think they can do better. We're looking at how can we get more people into the tax net, into the system.
Like you said, the informal sector.
Like he rightly said, the informal sector, how can we get more data built on the ground to knock on the doors of these companies? Those companies that derive a lot of billions in revenue that don't pay anything as tax. How can we get them into the system? And if we do, you may be surprised the amount of additional revenue this country can gather from there. That's what the minister said they are looking at. And again, a lot of attention is now being paid to the pioneer status so many companies enjoy in this country, and they abuse it. People collect pioneer status, they don't pay tax over a long time. Even when it expires, they're still enjoying it, and they're abusing the economy with that tax holiday allowance. That's being looked at. And of course, our big boys who drive, who go on private jets, yachts and all of those
luxury items,
they are being looked at now. I just hope they'll be able to implement that quite, strictly. And if they do, we'll be amazed the amount of revenue we can gather in this economy. And I think that's will help. In the immediate term, that's what I see as a solution. Very soon we'll start talking about other sectors that can come to our rescue. You find that those ones can help, but it's not actually in a short-term basis. Agriculture, solid minerals, manufacturing, the power sector, and all of that. Okay, but what we need to do now is to get our tax system, well. And of course, I love what the economic team are actually doing. When we talk about corruption, people have been very eager to see people being jailed, knocked on the head, a lot of media hype. But what I see this government doing is to very tactfully and gradually close all the loopholes and gaps, in terms of where corruption, stem from. So you look at, things like the integrated payroll system. You look at many other ways they have tried to see, like in this revenue generation thing now, by February 28, they have announced that the RBA, that's the revenue bank accounts, will be closed. Through the e-collection, government wants to now see, because there have been allegations and counter-allegations about banks that will collect monies, these tax funds from FIRS, from customs, immigration, and they will not be remitted to government. Or if they are eventually remitted, they are not fully remitted, or the remittance delays, and that affects budget implementation. Now they're saying those accounts will be closed effective February 28. And we want to see a situation whereby these funds are moved straight into through the e-collection method, move into the government purse. These are all ways to curtail corruption in this economy.
Okay. Now, Ayodeji, closing words, we're fast spent for time. What are your expectations now going forward, in the short term at least?
Yeah, we expect that CBN should try and come up with policies that can help accommodate the informal sector that has fueled demand within the forex market, and also continue to keep an eye on the banks to see some of those banks that are trying to run trip on the dollar.
But yes.
Okay, closing here now. Talking about my concern is the real sector. What we can do to drive the real sector, and I have about 4 or 5 sectors I think the attention must continue to be, placed
focused on.
Now, power sector is very critical, and if this government has not been, judged quite fairly, it's because they haven't made as much impact as we would want in the power sector. And I think they've noticed that. In view of the election and all of that, they've noticed that people are disappointed, not because many things have not been done, but because the one single important thing, the most important single thing which needs to do in this country, we haven't much done. Though a lot of effort has been made. The sector has been fully privatized. A lot of funds has been released. In fact, in the past 2 weeks, about 56 billion has been symbolically released to the owners of this private asset to enable them, that's in the stabilization fund. And agriculture, manufacturing, in fact, it's not something we can discuss at this point because we're rounding off. Maybe another day we can look at all these sectors and see how they can come in now to bridge the gap and help us, develop our real sector.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Oji Udemezwe, a financial management consultant, for joining us on the program this morning, and Mr. Ayodeji Ebo, the head investment research at Afrinvest.
Thank you.
Thank you, Harriet. It's been a wonderful time.
Well, thank you so much also for watching today's edition of the program. But if you missed out on the program, which actually looked at the latest developments at the Interbank Forex market, you can log on to youtube.com/channelsweb/videos. And don't forget to drop a comment or contribution or question, as the case may be. Follow at Biz Morning for updates on what's happening in the world of business. But that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Harriet Agbinyi. Bye-bye.